Before we get into this video is sponsored by Pro Guides. If you're dedicated to improving as a player, I highly recommend you check them out. Link in the description.
This will be fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mickey C, aka TheLoLHounds, and today we have a build guide on the highest ranked Korean Shaco main, and he is the true definition of a main or one trick pony player, because in ranked he has never played any other champion apart from Shaco so far this season, and he has close to 1,000 games already. Currently ranked 127 in Challenger, he plays Shaco in the jungle, and surprisingly he still builds Shaco similar to the way Shaco players used to build him prior to the mini rework, where he still maxes E first. A lot of players these days in the jungle are using a Bruiser Shaco build with Triforce and Titanic Hydra, however this Shaco still goes with a crit damage type build. He also has some pretty cool tricks that I haven't seen before, so I'll get into that a bit later in the video. This video is going to focus on his runes, masteries, items, and skill order, and then at the end I'll go over his playstyle / jungle path. So without further ado, let's do this. So first of all, summoner spells, he takes Smite and Ignite. He takes Ignite because he generally likes to counter jungle early, and so if he comes across the enemy jungler, Ignite helps to win the 1v1. It is also a very good early game summoner spell, and Korea is all about winning that early game. Moving on to his runes and masteries. Runes, he takes 980 reds, 9 health per level yellows, 9 CDR blues, 2 attack speed quints, and 1 CDR quints, giving him 10% CDR from runes overall. He also has this really cheesy rune page where he took 1 experience quint instead of the CDR quint. This was used as part of one of his Shaco tricks, which I'll talk about a bit later on in the video. It's pretty interesting stuff, so stay tuned for that. As for his masteries, he takes 12-18-0, with his keystone being Thunderlord's Decree. The biggest thing to point out with these masteries is he takes Assassin over Runic Affinity and Meditation over Merciless for the mana regeneration. This may be because it allows him to not start blue buff always, and also maybe because the mid laners demand the blue buff in Korea a lot more, so he often has to give it over because maybe he is just too much of a nice guy. Anyway, let's move over to the item build. His starting items would be a Hunter's Machete and a refillable potion. His first back will depend largely on how much gold he backs with. If he backs with 1200 gold or more, he would get a Tiamat. 1100 gold, he would get a Caulfield's Warhammer. 1000 gold, he would get a Skirmisher Saber. And anything under that, he would just get a Hunter's Talisman and a Longsword. His core build would be Warrior, Tiamat, Static Shiv, and an Infinity Edge. He would however get a Hex Drinker against double AP team comps after the Warrior and Tiamat. An example of a final build he would often end up with would be Warrior, Moby Boots, Ravenous Hydra, Static Shiv, Infinity Edge, and a Guardian Angel. Only other items he would really consider would be a Maw of Malmortius, Ninja Tabbies, and Phantom Dancer, all for more survivability. As for his skill order, he would start W, then Q, then E, max E first, Q second, W third, and his ultimate whenever he can. So as you can see, this is like an old school way of playing Shaco with the E max. E max does give more damage but less ganking potential earlier on. I feel like because he focuses a lot on counter jungling rather than just straight up ganking, he is happy to max E instead of Q. Now let's talk a little bit about his playstyle, but the first thing I want to talk about is when he uses the rune page with 1 experience quint. He puts down 3 boxes at the wolf camp and then starts the blue buff while receiving a leash. The 3 boxes are actually enough to kill the 2 small wolves by themselves. You can see after the blue buff, he then invades the red buff, and he now has 4 CS after doing the red and blue buff, and then he is level 3 when he'd normally be level 2 after 2 camps. You can see here that Elise is still level 2 while Shaco is level 3. A little bit of a fight breaks out and they manage to kill the Elise because of the level advantage that Shaco had. Karma eventually flashes in for the kill. Shaco then sees that Elise only had 4 CS, meaning that she had done the blue buff and wolf camp, so Shaco straight away after they got the kill ran to invade the enemy Gromp, knowing it is still up. This is what he keeps doing throughout the early game, invading the enemy camps whenever they are up and trying to put the enemy jungler super far behind. His jungle pathing in general is also really high standard, as you would expect from a challenger in Korea. But another example is in this game here against Zac, where he starts the Raptor camp on the red side, putting down 4 boxes, and then he sees Fiora is in the top lane, which shows that Zac started on the bot side, either on the Raptor camp or red buff, because Fiora did not leash. So he immediately then runs to Zac's blue buff and steals it. After doing blue buff, he then drops a ward to see if Zac is coming, and it also gives vision of wolves so he knows if Zac is doing it. He does Gromp, and then after Gromp, the ward spots Zac doing the wolf camp, and so he just goes in with Smite. He hasn't used Smite yet, so he smites away the camp, and then looks to kill Zac with Ignite, who eventually flashes away. This already puts Zac pretty far behind. From this, Shaco then ganks Yasuo because he is pretty far pushed up. He doesn't kill him, but gets some poke damage off to help Katarina. From here, he clears his whole bot side jungle and then eventually onto his red buff and then Raptor camp once again. Now from here, you would expect him to either back or clear Krugs, but instead of doing this, he decides to keep the pressure on and invade again. Another thing I noticed is he very rarely actually does Krugs, because I guess it just takes too long, especially without Tiamat. But after Raptors, he does the Scuttle Crab and then onto Gromp, drops the exact same ward as he did before, and this time with Katarina's help, they kill Zac at his wolf camp. And you can see at this point Shaco is level 6 while Zac is still level 4, and you may as well call the game over. You can also see that Jarvan, the top laner, is still level 5, so Shaco is so far ahead he can just snowball the game from here. He doesn't, however, invade every single time level 2. For example, against someone like Lee Sin, who has a fairly strong early game and can start either blue buff, red buff, or even Raptors, it is a bit more risky to invade someone like him. So what he does instead was Raptors, red buff, blue buff, and then gank top lane, which was a Lucian versus Jarvan, and Lucian naturally is going to push pressure the lane. So I'm pretty sure he planned out this gank before the game even started. He wanted to make sure that he ganked Lucian fairly early on to help Jarvan in the lane. So what he does is he forces the flash from Lucian and forces him to back as well, and then he has to TP back to lane. And then once he TPs, Shaco goes straight back for the gank and gets a free kill as Lucian doesn't have flash. So what this shows is he doesn't just have one set jungle path he takes every game. But yeah, that pretty much does it. Mid to late game, he looks to group with his team and assassinate the squishy targets if he can, but usually he waits till the fight breaks out first, as Shaco doesn't quite have the damage anymore to one shot like he used to. Another cool trick that he uses sometimes is that he can put down a box and use the blast cone to blast himself and the box to his desired location. This is something that I had no idea that you can do. I wonder if it is the same thing with Heimer turrets. It's pretty cool. Anyway, there's not much else to really say. That is the highest ranked Korean Shaco. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If so, drop that like button. And as always, have a nice day.